Okay, welcome everyone. This is our blab on the diet for depression. And I'm joined here with my co-host, Paul, who
Hello.
will be leading the session for us.
Excellent. Okay, so Christine, depression affects a lot of people. We hear it all the time, don't we? Oh, I'm feeling depressed, and and all the rest of it, and it really rocks people. It rocks the center of their earth, doesn't it? Really,
It does. And the reason I wanted to do a blab now is because actually post-Christmas, it can be a time when it actually hits people quite a lot. And, the Center for Disease Control, which is in the States, one of the biggest sort of authorities that do a lot of stats, have estimated that around about 11% of people will from time to time suffer with depression.
right.
And it's something that can vary in extremes, from just feeling a little bit low to maybe suffering with seasonal affective disorder or, bipolar, psychotic episodes. So it can vary from very mild to very severe.
Okay. Now, you've just covered really the next thing I was going to ask about the degrees of depression.
Yeah.
But I think that at the top end of the scale, I think for some people that's something they need to seek medical
absolutely.
attention
Absolutely.
for.
Yeah.
But I've got to say that at the lower end of the scale, I mean, I, as you know, have been embarked upon a lifestyle change. And I'm doing quite well, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm exercising, I'm eating well, and all the rest of it. But one thing that I noticed almost immediately, and actually I didn't notice it, my wife noticed it, that my moods are a lot better, a lot more pleasant to be around. So it really, and that's just through eating healthier, exercising, and just generally taking care of myself. So at that bottom end of the scale, that is something that is affected by nutrition, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And, every day, the decisions we make about our food and also other lifestyle changes can have a profound effect on neurotransmitters, which very much affect the way we think and feel. But I mean, in terms of, well, how do I know if I'm depressed?
Symptoms.
That again, if you are, just mildly low in mood, you can have a range of different symptoms. So it might just be, general feeling of sadness, emptiness, anxiety. You may be quite irritable. You might find that you're very short in temper. For some people, it's just a feeling of worthlessness. Everything I do is rubbish. For some people, it will be suicidal thoughts or, real down, sort of deep, dark, depressive thoughts. But it can also be physical symptoms. So often sleep problems, which may be sleeping too much or sleeping too little, low energy, fatigue. It can be weight changes. So for some people, it might be complete loss of appetite. For other, it's a constant craving to eat, almost that comfort eating. For some people, it can be very things like difficulty concentrating, feeling focused. Making decisions can be another one as well. So it can vary tremendously. And it's worth also mentioning that, seasonal affective disorder, SAD, or the SAD, it's sometimes called, is actually quite a common problem at this time of year, particularly.
Is that to do with vitamin D, is it? Or?
Exactly. And particularly in I would say the Northern Hemisphere, where we know that vitamin D has quite a profound effect on mood. We have vitamin D receptors in our brain. And obviously, the main source of vitamin D is our sunlight. So, of course, if we're indoors most of the time and or in the winter, we're just not going to get enough vitamin D. So if that is an issue, it's more of a seasonal issue, then things like the light therapy, getting vitamin D as a supplement, things like that may actually be very useful for you.
Right. Okay. But what about what some of the foods can we eat
Yeah.
to address? So some food with that are packed with vitamin D.
Yeah, so there are a few. There aren't many, and this is why a lot
Right.
of us are low. It's estimated around about 80% of us are low. So, for a lot of my clients, they will do a home spot prick test just to see what are my vitamin D levels. But oily fish is a good source. I mean, it's interesting, the old adage of giving your child a spoonful of cod liver oil, which is actually quite a good source of vitamin D, has a lot of benefits. And, we'll talk about oily fish anyway, but oily fish is a source of vitamin D. Full fat milk and dairy products contains a little bit. Shiitake mushrooms and mushrooms generally will contain some, but it's unlikely to be enough to be really optimal. So I would suggest people check their levels, because vitamin D is fat soluble. You don't want to overdose because you can store vitamin D. Check your levels, supplement as needed. I always look for around about 80 to 100 nanomoles in terms of levels. So, that's a sort of amount that I would be looking at.
Okay. Now, one of our members of the audience has asked the question: dark chocolate with high level of flavonols. Is that something you can use to address your vitamin D levels?
No, it's not. But dark chocolate is known as a sort of mood, what I call a mood booster. It contains various chemicals that can temporarily influence our mood, which is why some people do feel good. I mean, there's other reasons for that, but polyphenols are very protective for our brain health, but I don't think it particularly are related to mood long-term boosting. I mean, it does depend what are the underlying reasons why you're depressed. And what we know is that from a biochemical point of view, there's actually a lot of imbalances that can happen. So, for example, hormonal imbalances we know are linked to depression. So if you are low thyroid, and a lot of people are low thyroid and don't even know it, because suboptimal hyperthyroidism is actually quite common, but low thyroid is linked to depression and low mood generally. So thyroid imbalances are a problem. Adrenal stress, cortisol actually changes the structure of your brain. It changes the dendrites. These are the little sort of connectors to our neurons, and they are involved with communication of neurotransmitters. Cortisol also blunts serotonin. Now, serotonin is our mood boosting neurotransmitter. And that's why a lot of people who are on antidepressants, what they're actually taking is something to boost levels of serotonin. They're called SSRIs. So serotonin is very important for our mood, and adrenal stress can block or blunt the serotonin. And hormones, so testosterone, if it's low in men, can be linked to depression. Estrogen, progesterone also influence serotonin levels, which is why when women start moving towards the menopause and their estrogen and progesterone levels get lower, it can actually affect serotonin. So there's a lot of other things that can be going on that may be contributing to why you don't feel great.
And so you mentioned, and I'm obviously a man, so I'm going to talk about that testosterone thing that you mentioned there. Is there things we can do in our diet that can help boost those hormonal levels?
Yeah.
Or hormone stimulating chemicals?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing is that it's worth, testosterone, again, it's a hormone that men and women both have, but obviously for men, it has perhaps a more profound role to play. Yes. Stress can also interfere with testosterone. So a lot of things that people do are linked to coping with stress. So taking things like maca powder, ashwagandha, these are adrenal adaptogens. They can be very useful. The other things that can influence testosterone and a lot of other hormones is making sure you have enough protein in your diet and sufficient fat, because all our hormones, testosterone, progesterone, and so on, they're all made from cholesterol. So we need sufficient cholesterol, and so we need a reasonable amount of fat and protein in our diet. So, everyone thinks, oh, cholesterol's terrible. Actually, it's vital for all our hormones. Eggs,
and the good fat also helps with the digestion, doesn't it?
Well, it helps potentially as well with other functions in the brain. If you think about our brain is predominantly fat. Right. So again, if you starve your body of fat, your brain is likely to suffer. The brain has a high concentration of what we call polyunsaturated fats. They're found in the cell membranes, and they help with the production and the receiving of neurotransmitters like serotonin that help our mood. So if we want to improve our nerve cell function in our brain, we need to make sure we have sufficient fats, but particular the omega-3 fats. And there have been studies. Someone asked a question about, can fish oil help with depression? Well, actually, yes, there have been quite a few positive studies on omega-3 and also mood boosting studies. So there was a very good study by someone called Puri in 2001 who showed that adding omega-3 fat actually relieved depressive symptoms in one study. And they've also done it on children as well. So there's quite a lot of good studies on fat boosting mood.
And how quickly does the body absorb these fats, and how regularly do you have to eat them?
Yeah. So again, it can be worth, not for everyone, doing what we call a fatty acids home spot blood test. You can just prick your finger and it will tell you what are your levels of omega-3, but also what's your ratio between omega-3 and omega-6, because the studies show it's the ratio that's actually very important. Omega-3 is very much anti-inflammatory, whereas omega-6 is pro. So you want to get that balance right. So you can test yourself. Recommendation is generally eat oily fish. And what I mean by oily fish are things like salmon, trout, sardines, mackerel, herring, kippers. Try and eat that 3 times a week. I wouldn't really go for the very big fish like tuna, because there are concerns that it has quite a lot of toxins and mercury. So I tend to go for the smaller fish. Try and eat that 3 times a week. But for a lot of people, they can benefit from taking a fish oil supplement. You need to make sure it's good quality. You need to make sure it's been screened properly for things like mercury. I've got some on my website that I use with my clients. But really, the fish oil is the best direct source of the active constituents, which are known as things like EPA and DHA. You can get some omega-3 from flaxseed and chia, but it has to then be converted by the body into those active forms, and it's not always that good for a lot of people.
Right.
So fish oil and getting fish in your diet, the oily fish, is definitely a good move for mood. But remember, there are a lot of other things that might be going on, like the hormonal imbalances. There's also been studies to show blood sugar imbalances influence mood. Now, and that makes sense, doesn't it? If you haven't eaten for a long time, quite often we get irritable, moody. And if that happens a lot, or you actually have a problem with balancing your blood sugar, diabetes, insulin resistance, then that can also be linked to poor mood. So for those people, eating regularly, eating lots of protein at each meal to stabilize your blood sugar could be very useful. But there's other things that are often going on. So people that are very low in certain B vitamins, folate, B12, B6, linked to depression. And what's interesting is that, I see a lot of clients, Paul, I genetically test a lot of people. And what we know is that there are around about 40 to 50% of the population that have certain genetic SNPs related to how well we process folate. They're called MTFRs. I don't want to get too complicated, but so there are a lot of people that have a SNP in the MTHFR, which can influence how well the body can methylate. It's called methylation. And methylation is very much involved with the production of serotonin, which is our mood boosting neurotransmitter. So if you've got a problem with that process, it may well be that you are more prone to depression, and therefore you may need a supplement which contains methylfolate B12. So going back to food, leafy green vegetables, asparagus, avocado, these are all good sources of those B vitamins. Get those in every day. 1 to 2 cups of green veg, brassicas, broccoli, kale, spinach, asparagus, all of those. Get them in every day.
And that some of those things are not easy to eat as they are. So would you suggest a smoothie or something like that?
Yeah. And we've talked about that in the past, blending them all up, making them into a soup, snacking on kale crisp, those sort of things.
Can be delicious like that too, can't they?
Absolutely. And we're going to be, launching a smoothie challenge early next month. So, just to show people how easy it is to get those in the diet as well. Yeah. It might be worth me just mentioning a couple of other nutrients that we know are often linked. Magnesium. If you are someone that gets quite anxious as well as, low mood, which is very common actually, and or you struggle with winding down at night, then consider magnesium. Magnesium is really important for healthy nervous system, healthy muscle system, and is quite a calming mineral. And it's also important for blood sugar regulation. So there have been a few studies linked with magnesium deficiency and depression. So if you have an issue with, winding down, sleep and so on, restless legs, think about, do I need magnesium? Because it can, again, be very useful for mood.
And is there something, rather than taking it in supplement form, is there a smoothie with some kind of natural foods that we can stick in there to aid that?
You can. Do you know one of the best ways, cheap ways of getting more magnesium? And that is to make yourself an Epsom salt bath. So you get typical Epsom salts, which is magnesium sulfate, chuck it in a bath, about 2 cupfuls, soak in it for 15 minutes.
It's all through the skin.
Exactly.
Right.
Because yes, you can. I mean, magnesium is found in things like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, grains. It's found in leafy greens. But for some people, particularly if you exercise a lot and you sweat out the electrolytes, including magnesium, then you may need to have an additional way of getting in. You can also get magnesium oil spray, which you literally spray onto your skin and rub it in. So that's also quite useful as well.
Right. And what a better way to relax than actually in a bath. I'm going to try that because I actually sometimes struggle to wind down after a sort of a mentally draining day. And my mind is overactive. And
it's good for kids as well. It's good for children. One other thing it's worth mentioning is that we mentioned serotonin, which is our mood booster. There are foods that you can take which are naturally rich in tryptophan. Now, tryptophan is an amino acid that our body will convert into serotonin. So by eating those tryptophan-rich foods, particularly in the evening, can also be a really good way of boosting your mood. You need to eat it with a little bit of carbohydrate to help it into the brain. So, for example, good sources, all the proteins, meat, fish, lamb, poultry, chicken, turkey, fish, prawns, but also things like oats, yogurt, eggs, cottage cheese, bananas will contain a little. So all of those, get those in every day at regular intervals, because those will contain, extra tryptophan. You can supplement with tryptophan and 5-HTP, which I've put on the website. But, again, it's good to get it in the diet.
Right. Wonderful. Now, perhaps you could, before we wrap this up, because we are gonna wrap this up in a moment, maybe just give us some idea of some good meals that we can prepare for ourselves throughout a week to address our mood. Maybe take it over one day, breakfast, lunch and dinner.
That's a really good thing. So breakfast, get protein in to stabilize your blood sugar. If you're stressed, what you could do is make up a protein shake, add some maca powder or ashwagandha, blend in some greens, maybe a bit of raw cacao, almond nut butter, make a nice chocolate green smoothie. You could do oats made with milk, which will contain tryptophan, but add some extra protein, nuts and seeds onto that. So have porridge or muesli. You could have eggs and asparagus for breakfast, or wilted greens. Brilliant. So all of those really good options. Lunch, why not have prawn, mackerel, salmon, salad? Loads of greens, loads of protein, maybe add a bit of sweet potato or quinoa or brown rice if you want a bit of carb. Snack on nuts and seeds, almond nut butter's a good one. Maybe have another protein shake, some kale crisps, some raw crackers, oat cakes with cottage cheese. Evening, maybe have something quite lean like turkey mince or a curry or something like that. Anti-inflammatories can be very useful for the brain. Maybe add a load of mushrooms for a little bit of extra vitamin D. Add some protein, which could be lean turkey or poultry, a good source of tryptophan at night. Maybe have a snack in the evening of, some berries with some yogurt, for example. So that would be a really good protective for the brain, but also mood boosting.
Right. Wonderful. Well, Christine, thanks very much for that. Really useful information. For those watching live or the recording, listening to the recording afterwards, Christine's done a phenomenal blog on diet for depression. So if you go to Christine's website at christinebailey.co.uk and tap the blog button, you'll find that there. And for those watching live now, I've put a link in the comments there. We do have a question from a member of the audience, but we'll address that in the after show when we go off air, because it's not really relevant to this particular discussion.
Brilliant.
But Christine, thanks very much. Always love doing these with you. I always go away feeling really motivated, through nutrition. So it's absolutely fantastic. So thanks very much.
Many thanks.